Good morning. My name is Annemarie Milisen, and I'm going to talk about nutrition and brain health. So thanks for being here. Couple things you'll notice: there is no handout that you've been given, and that's by design. So what I'm going to have you do, if you're willing, you don't have to, it's just a suggestion. If you'll take one of those blank pieces of paper in your packet where it says notes, I'll explain to you as we're going through this why I'm having you do this, but for those of you that are willing, I'm going to have you take one of those pieces of paper and divide it into 3 columns, so just 2 lines. I promise this will be connected to nutrition and brain health. And then at the very end, I'll wrap up how you're going to be using this, because one of my commitments to each of you is that you're super glad you came, because nutrition is one of those things I find it's a polarized conversation, regardless of where I am. People either really love nutrition or they duck and run because they're waiting for me to tell them to stop doing all those things they may love to do. Stop eating chocolate and don't eat ice cream or all those things. I promise you that is not what we're going to be doing today. And nutrition is something that we can't get away from. We all have to eat at some point. And in this particular case, I'm looking to bring a new spin to nutrition, where for some of you it might be review. And if it's review, I'd like you to dive a bit deeper. That's where this handout or this paper will come in handy. And if it's new for you, you're going to be able to capture things as you go along. So there's not going to be a whole lot of content on the slides either, because usually I find when I'm talking about nutrition, people know a lot about nutrition. We all have some idea of what to eat, when to eat, how to eat. And if there's a lot of content on the slides, people will often kind of orient themselves to what they already know. So I'd like you to use the images on the slide and just be with me, be in this conversation. And on that paper, in the first column, I'd like you to put up at the top areas of interest to me. And like Dr. Haug talked about, he addressed 3 primary categories. So one was the autonomic category, kind of the umbrella over things that you don't have to think about: your digestion, your heart rate, things that run 24 hours a day. You might have areas of interest that would be more specific to day-to-day operations as a human, right? Maybe it's sleep, maybe it's energy, maybe there's something very specific to food. Maybe you're really interested in getting underneath cravings. It could be sugar. Maybe you know you should be eating protein, but you don't know how much or when, or you don't feel good when you eat it. So I would like you to have at least 3 areas of interest. And take a moment, if you would, and go ahead and write those down. And then the second column, I want you to put up the top, AHA, A-H-A. And my area of expertise is neurochemical nutrition, so everything that you think, everything that you speak, everything that you eat impacts your neurochemistry. And an AHA is when you experience something that's kind of like an inner fireworks. And there will be something that kind of goes kapow. And I want you to put it so that you're able to connect it to those areas that are of interest to you. And you don't know what might come along. There may be nothing, but if it does, I want you to be able to capture it right there. And then the third column is going to be next steps. Okay? All right, so we're talking about nutrition. I have a picture of Pikes Peak and Garden of Gods. Just to give you a little bit of background, that is where I grew up. I grew up in the shadow of Pikes Peak, and I went to school in Fort Collins. I now live in Denver. You can call me the Front Range girl. I'm a bona fide Colorado native. And why I have that image there is that, for me, is where everything started. My mom was one of those moms who would do homemade bread and romaine lettuce and fresh ground peanut butter, and I would try to barter with kids at school for their ding-dongs. Or I remember the Fruit Loop or the fruit roll-ups they had were those really thin, yummy fruit roll-ups, and we had the real fruit leathers that they still make. So I'm here because nutrition it's part of me. Colorado's a part of me, and this is my stomping grounds. So if you have any questions, be it at the end of this talk or in the future, maybe you get an aha that's a delayed aha. I am only but an email or a phone call away. office right in Cherry Creek North. So I'm curious, I'd like to hear from one or two, maybe three of you. What is it that you're here to explore? Like, what had you pick nutrition for Parkinson's? Because there are two other talks going on in this moment. Who would be willing to share? Just raise your hand right here.
I've been struggling with fatigue.
Okay.
My physician suggested that maybe it's a dietary-related issue.
Great. Great, you're in the right place. So that would be one of your areas of interest, fatigue and alleviating that. Great. Back there on the right.
I'm curious about the microbiome and if we really need to go that far.
Awesome. So she said she's curious about the microbiome. For some of you, that might be an obvious term. For some of you, you may be wondering, what in the heck is the microbiome? We're not going to get to that today, but it's an awesome question. The microbiome speaks to the flora in your gut. And it's a whole city in there. Super important. And maybe for a future talk, that might be something to write down on the review. Feedback form somewhere in there. Like, would love to see something around that. It's absolutely critical, essential, and it's a really great conversation. One more. Right here.
I've been suffering with constipation for probably 20, 30 years.
Okay.
Since my diagnosis, I also have quite a bit of nausea, which causes carb cravings.
Gotcha.
So,
And carbs, is there a favorite carb for you?
well, anything that is like a bread or a corn cake or, just
Gotcha.
something to alleviate the nausea, but that I know is basically not a good thing for me to eat because I also have
Perfect.
elevated blood sugar.
Perfect. You're in the right place. Make that note, and if you don't get an aha before the end, come find me. Okay? Great. Moving along. What comes to mind when you think of nutrition? Just anything. Just shout it out. Vitamins. What else?
Healthy food.
Healthy food, like what? What's healthy?
Fresh.
Fruits, vegetables. I heard fresh, right? What else? Tastes good. And for some people, nutritional food tastes bad, right? It's kind of both. What else? Give me two more. Quality. And what was that over here? Smell, and the scent and the aroma. And for those that can't smell, right? So when you look at nutrition, it's all kinds of things. Mental note to self, wear a different dress next time. So all of that is valid, right? So nutrition is a very personal conversation. It's a very personal topic. We're going to take all that, and if you look up there, it's all kinds of information. Everybody's got an opinion. What to eat, when to eat, how to eat. Paleo, Atkins, raw food, vegan, vegetarian. There's even an ice cream diet that I've heard about. And what we're doing today is we're sifting it down so that you have one little bit of information specific to you. So some of you, like, I love this picture because you can't really tell how she's feeling. She could be excited, anticipatory, anticipating something. She could even have gas. I don't know. So wherever you are is perfect, and you may not find this the least bit exciting. If that's the case, hang in there and dig in a bit deeper to really look for something that's going to give you a level of relief. Now, this is something that I'm specifically focusing on today, where we look at nutrition, digestion, and brain health. So Dr. Haug already went over a lot of the things that are common in the Parkinson's community, and they're going to be different levels of things that people are dealing with. Constipation has come up. It sounds like it's a pretty common and consistent symptom, but there are other digestive issues, whether you have Parkinson's or not, that people are dealing with. So what are some other digestive issues that come to mind?
Celiac disease.
Celiac disease, specifically, like what would be a symptom?
Diarrhea, cramping.
Yep. Diarrhea, cramping. So celiac disease, for those of you that may not know, is where they cannot consume gluten. It creates an inflammatory state in the gut, and it really turns things on end. So gas, bloating, and sometimes the unknowns, like how come I can eat that food and I'm fine and I can't eat this food? Are there any particular foods that are problems aside from gluten for anyone? What, peppers? Bell peppers, hot peppers? Okay. What time is it? How much time do we have? We have how much?
2 more minutes.
Okay.
No, excuse me.
7 minutes, about 7, okay. Great, so heartburn, has anybody dealt with or know somebody that deals with heartburn?
And also even upper chest pain, I mean, we've had him scope, so
Yep,
fine, but different things make him be pain and spit blood even.
yeah. And so in this case, like, no bueno, right? Nobody wants to not feel good. And my orientation is from a nutritional perspective, so the medical perspective where there may be medications, there's a lot of merit there. But what we want to get underneath is foundationally what's going on. So today we're going over 3 keys to support digestive, brain, energy, health. So enzymes. Enzymes are essential for effective digestion. Who's heard of enzymes before? Who has not heard of enzymes in a conversation around digestion? Okay, so everybody has some awareness around it. Why do I have a picture of a key and a lock? Who would, I'll tell you, it's not a trick question, but who would be willing to wager a guess?
To start.
It's art, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It's a way to unlock the brain. Good, good. What was, to start?
In your stomach.
Awesome. What would be another guess? Anybody else? What, I heard something back there. Because you get locked out. Brilliant. What's your name? Rich? Awesome, awesome. All of you are spot on. In this particular case, enzymes are a key. They are a key to unlock food. And why I have a key and a car lock is because enzymes are pretty groovy. You get to use them over and over and over. So in this particular case, granted at some point you keep unlocking that lock, that key might very well wear out. In the case of enzymes, your body breaks that enzyme down into its individual amino acids. Has anybody not heard of amino acids before? Okay, so in this case, we want to break down food into its individual building blocks so that your body can actually use that food with efficiency to build, restore, and otherwise replenish your body. So anything that you're looking to impact, if we can upregulate the foundational steps of what it takes to digest food, this being simply one, you're going to be more likely to be able to liberate the things you need from your food to then do what you need to do in your body to be well. So let me give you a couple specific examples. So pineapple and papain, protease or proteolytic enzymes, they support the digestion of protein. Now, these are plant-based proteolytic enzymes, so when you buy meat tenderizer, it has these or some combination of these in it. If you just put these enzymes on a slab of meat and you let it sit, what happens to that meat? It tenderizes it, makes it easier to chew. It's a great way to take a low-quality cut of meat and have it actually be tender. When you take proteolytic enzymes and you consume them with food, or you activate them in food, so there are ways that you can activate them in food, or your gut produces, or your pancreas specifically, and your stomach will produce proteolytic enzymes, or a gastric chamber with which you can be producing and digesting protein. When you use proteolytic enzymes, in this particular case, here's what I want you to get most directly. If you break down protein, you're breaking down the individual amino acids that are necessary to produce, very specifically, neurochemicals. Neurochemicals that are going to tie into, for instance, sleep. So let's look at this. How can digestion and sleep be connected? Well, let's say turkey is being consumed. Thanksgiving is coming up, or maybe turkey's not your shtick. Your doctor's told you to stay clear of turkey because it's high in tryptophan. But somewhere in there, you're going to be getting tryptophan. If you are able to break down that tryptophan, and then you're able to convert it into its postcursor 5-HTP, which converts it into serotonin. What comes to mind when you think of serotonin? Well, yes, and some people don't get that. Serotonin is usually associated with feeling good. It's the sunshine neurochemical, right? Go outside, get some sunshine, it'll increase those serotonin levels. Go for a run or ride your bike or just get outside and breathe fresh air. But to convert then from serotonin to melatonin, which Dr. Haug was pointing to, if your melatonin levels are naturally coming up because you have more of the raw materials to actually produce it, it's possible that you can actually upregulate your sleep patterns without having to externally impact. Or you can sometimes work with your physician to down dose on some of the medications that might be being used, or maybe even melatonin. So you can go from what might be a 3, 5, 10 milligram dose, you could actually find a lower dose that might actually prove beneficial. Lipase supports digestion of fat. Why would fat be one thing that we would absolutely want to be digesting in reference to brain and brain health? Somebody give me a shout out.
Your brain is fat, isn't it?
It's got a heck of a lot of fat. In this case, it'd be really good to be called a fat head, right? So if somebody's dealing with some level of malabsorption being gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, or otherwise, you want to be sure that you're supporting your body and breaking down that fat so that you can actually extract the nutrients you need to support, in one particular example, healthy brain functioning. And because there's such a high content of fat in the brain, if you can actually be using the fats you're taking in, how many people take fish oil supplementally? So it's great as a supplement if you have a high quality product, but it's not going to do you a lick of good if you can't actually break it down and assimilate it. It just makes for really expensive flushing. And in this case, you know, you've got nuts, walnuts in particular. There's a theory out there that you can look at food and see what it nourishes, but if you look at a half of a walnut, it does look a bit like a brain. And when you look at the fat profile, some in the nutritional realm would say that that points to, if it's a healthy, refrigerated walnut, that it might actually be quite good for your brain and otherwise. How are we doing on time? Okay, so amylase and cellulase. Amylase is very specifically going to support carbohydrate digestion. So what was your name as far? Yeah, yep.
Marty.
What is it? Marty? M-A-R-T-Y. Marty. So for you, amylase, cellulase. Cellulase is actually going to digest cellulose or help break down cellulose with plant fiber. But if somebody, and I do know that we have people in here that may not be doing grain, we have paleo goers in here, and otherwise, today we're not talking about different theories. Whatever it is that you're eating, you want to be sure that you're able to digest that particular food. So if carbohydrates are causing you a bit of a struggle, bread products in particular, one of the things that you might find is if you can actually upregulate your body's ability to digest those things, it might actually have you no longer be pulled towards those foods. Sometimes I find that's the case. If somebody's craving ice cream, high fat, sweet ice cream, you kind of have a double whammy, where the fat actually will raise your endorphins. It's a numbing, delicious impact when you have fat. And then it's got the sugar, which will actually lift those serotonin levels. If you can fundamentally anchor your digestion, sometimes those cravings will kind of fall by the wayside. I would recommend, Marty, that you find somebody who can work with you to figure out how and when, be it your physician or a dietitian or a nutritionist, so that you can actually get results quickly. Because in this particular case, we're talking about plant enzymes. These are specific to what you would find in plants. Now, why I have the capsules in front of it, I'm not necessarily a big advocate of supplementation, but in this case, with enzymes, it's one of the most inexpensive, most immediate, and useful supplements for many people. There would be a a contradictory use of enzymes if you have medication that you don't want to be breaking down at a faster rate, like some particular medications may have a protein coating or otherwise, who knows? Dr. Haug, that would be where we call you back up, to have people know when they do and don't take things. But in general, plant enzymes, you can find them just about anywhere. If you have problems swallowing capsules, here's the cool thing. Enzymes are activated in 3 environments. What would you guess? So let's think, if you're taking them in your mouth and they're activated through your digestive tract, what do we have going on here? How light is it in your digestive tract? It's not at all. So it's not necessarily going to be light. Light will break them down. Is it wet? It's wet. What's the body temperature? Is it cold like the Arctic? It's warm. So primarily warmth and water. So you can open capsules, or I have some supplements. I don't sell supplements. I happen to like to experiment with different products and find different practitioners who like different products to find what works. But I have some up here. One is a powder, so you don't have to deal with swallowing. You can actually mix it in with whatever it is you might be eating. You don't want to cook them because it'll denature the enzymes. Remember, we want to reuse them. There are capsules that are inexpensive, and then you have capsules that are very expensive, like a Ferrari. And then as far as time, how long does it take? I've had clients come to me and they are dealing with gas and otherwise bloating, and within 15 minutes of consuming an enzyme, because it goes right to work. It can be immediate. For other people, it may be much longer term. So where do we go from here? This is where we go back to your handout or your notes. And I'm going to have you take a moment and look to see what's next. So that third column would be next step. And I'd love for those of you that are playing this game to have one thing that you walk away with, that you can go to work with right now, as in today, maybe within the next 24 hours, so that you can experience a level of relief. And I think we're just about completely out of time. I have time for probably 3 questions. So plant enzymes, which ones are you wanting to take? I would recommend a broad spectrum plant enzyme. Most supplement companies make them. If you have questions about specific enzymes or products, I would go to some of the local stores, like at Natural Grocers, Whole Foods, Sprouts. You can even go to some of the main grocery stores. The processed foods, or the enzymes beneficial for the processed foods? That's a great question. Her question is, what about processed foods? And I think the example you used was a burger, anything packaged, boxed, otherwise. Should we stop eating those? Well, here, let me qualify this. In the world of nutrition, the minute I tell you to stop doing something, what are you going to go do? It's reverse psychology, right? Doesn't work so well. So what I suggest is take the focus off what you should or shouldn't eat and look towards what feels good. Sometimes you want that burger. I had one client who craved Heath bars. Everybody know what a Heath bar is? And he was so resistant of this Heath bar, he would eat it and then he would eat 6 more. And he was a big guy, and his wife was from, I think she was from Costa Rica, and she was cooking the most amazing food. And he would come into my office and he would suffer. He would say, I did it again. What did you do? He said, I ate Heath bars. I had 5 of them. So his assignment was actually to eat a Heath bar, but consciously eat it. Just eat one. And in his case, it wasn't an enzyme thing. He had all kinds of emotional stuff going on. So I would take the charge away from the food. Food isn't categorically good or bad. It's what we make it mean. And dependent upon where you are, start where you are. So, true, they can, yep, they absolutely. What you can do for people that may be doing a lot of processed foods, the enzymes become kind of a peace offering for your body. Because in those processed foods, there's not much life. I have a McDonald's apple pie that I got, I think it was 8 years ago, at a talk that I had done, and a gentleman thought he was eating fresh fruit. He was really proud of himself. He had 3 apple pies, and he was so excited, and we were talking about blood sugar balance. And we talked afterwards, and I said, I would suggest that you get a couple Egg McMuffins next time. And he said, but they're so high in fat. And I said, yes, and. So we had that conversation, but for him, he was so clear that he had permission to then eat an upgrade that he gave me an apple pie as a thank you. And then I put a date on it, and it's where I used to work. They still have it at the home office. Every year we do a little homage to apple pies from McDonald's, which have not a lick of fresh apple in them. One more question, Marty.
I'm wondering if you've come across something like resistance to enzymes. And I'll give you an example. I took a trip to the Dominican Republic, and they had papaya at breakfast every morning.
Yeah.
And so I started eating the papaya.
Marty, hold on just one sec. What time are we at?
11:28.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes. I'll be sticking around afterwards. I think Dr. Haug will be as well. Marty, let's go ahead and we'll finish with your question. So they're eating a lot of papaya.
I started eating papaya every morning for breakfast, and within a day, my bowel movements were, it was like a miracle.
Yeah.
Well, when I got home, I continued eating papaya, but now it doesn't really seem to be doing it.
That's a really great question. And I'll give you a brief response now. If all you're doing is adding in enzymes, a specific enzyme, and that's the only thing you're doing, it's possible that you'll reach a point where your body will adapt. You might look at shifting foods, you might look at shifting brands. Usually enzymes are a start, right? There's so many other things we could talk about, acid production and betaine hydrochloride, where somebody thinks they have acid excess, they may have actually hypochloremia, where they're not producing enough acid production. So it could be that that's a starting point, and when you stop to notice relief, then rather than having that food or those enzymes no longer be sufficient, you could then be in the inquiry around what next? Because your body's forever shifting and changing. And if you were in the Dominican Republic, were you on vacation?
Yes.
Yes, so that might have had something to do with it too. Because where you relax, you shift your autonomic nervous system into a state of rest.
I wasn't relaxed.
You were not.
It was actually a very stressful
Was it?
environment.
So by coming home, you might have found more relief. But for those that might be on vacation and they're noticing foods are digesting more effectively, you're actually activating the autonomic arm of or the side of the autonomic nervous system that is responsible for digestion and rest, which is that of a state of rest and ease versus a state of stress. So thank you so much for coming. I'll be around if you have questions. And thank you, Dr. Haug, for your talk as well.